63. Talk with the Kings. 1.
Zarathustra left the soothsayer in his cave, and is out to find out where the cry of distress is coming from.
Ere Zarathustra had been an hour on his way in the mountains and forests, he saw all at once a strange procession. Right on the path which he was about to descend came 2 kings walking, bedecked with crowns and purple girdles, and variegated like flamingos. They drove before them a laden ass.
The first people he meets on his way are 2 kings, who are walking a donkey. This seems strange. Kings would usually associate themselves with more noble animals, like horses, and if they need a donkey to carry their luggage, they would let others drive it. It seems that these kings have fallen from grace.
What do these kings want in my domain? Said Zarathustra in astonishment to his heart, and hid himself hastily behind a thicket. When, however, the kings approached to him, he said half aloud, like one speaking only to himself, "Strange, strange. How doth this harmonize? 2 kings do I see, and only 1 ass."
Zarathustra also notices the oddness in the picture, although his comment seems to be a sarcastic mockery of kings, as was his way, suggesting that 2 kings need 2 donkeys.
Thereupon the 2 kings made a halt. They smiled and looked towards the spot whence the voice proceeded, and afterwards looked into each other's faces. "Such things do we also think among ourselves," said the king on the right, "but we do not utter them." The king on the left, however, shrugged his shoulders and answered, "That may perhaps be a goatherd, or an anchorite who hath lived too long among rocks and trees, for no society at all spoileth also good manners."
The kings are amused by his words, because they know they look ridiculous, and they seem to take pleasure in the fact that someone dares to speak this way before them. In the confines of society, kings have to constantly live with worship and sycophancy, as obligated by the manners of their culture. The king on the left surmises, correctly, that the speaker must be someone detached from society.
"Good manners?" replied angrily and bitterly the other king. "What then do we run out of the way of? Is it not good manners, our good society? Better verily to live among anchorites and goatherds than with our gilded, false, over-rouged populace, though it call itself good society."
The king on the right spells it out. They both escaped society, because they could no longer live with its so-called good manners. They are seeking something more truthful.
"Though it call itself nobility, but there all is false and foul, above all the blood, thanks to old evil diseases and worse curers. The best and dearest to me at present is still a sound peasant, coarse, artful, obstinate and enduring. That is at present the noblest type."
Nietzsche, we know, held nobility in high regard, but here he shows that he doesn't mean the way that noblemen of his time behaved. When he talked of nobility, he meant a code of conduct that included things like self-discipline, individualism, and pride in oneself. The king says that the nobleman lost these qualities. The noblest people of the time are the rural peasants, who are at least true to their nature.
"The peasant is at present the best, and the peasant type should be master. But it is the kingdom of the populace. I no longer allow anything to be imposed upon me. The populace, however, that meaneth hodgepodge. Populace hodgepodge, therein is everything mixed with everything, saint and swindler, gentleman and Jew, and every beast out of Noah's Ark."
The king makes the distinction, among the simple folks, between peasants and populace. The peasants are those who remain true to their nature. In contrast, there is modern society that is a mix of many different types of people, each with their own values, which has created a hodgepodge of values with no coherency or logic. The populace are those who just adopt this mix of values that is imposed on them, which has nothing to do with their nature. We've heard Zarathustra say similar things in the past.
"Good manners. Everything is false and foul with us. No one knoweth any longer how to reverence. It is that, precisely, that we run away from. They are fulsome, obtrusive dogs. They gild palm leaves. This loathing choketh me. that we kings ourselves have become false, draped and disguised with the old faded pomp of our ancestors, showpieces for the stupidest, the craftiest, and whosoever at present trafficketh for power. We are not the first men, and have nevertheless to stand for them. Of this imposture have we at last become weary and disgusted. From the rabble have we gone out of the way, from all those bawlers and scribe blowflies, from the trader stench, the ambition fidgeting, the bad breath. Fie, to live among the rabble.
What is at present day called good manners is not what was called so in the past. In the past, good manners were determined by the noblemen, and were aimed at teaching one to develop their skills. But what today's populace calls good manners is determined by the rabble, and is just an expression of that aforementioned hodgepodge of values. The noblemen, including kings, are now obliged to act according to these manners as well. But these two kings still remember how it used to be, and they realize that these new manners are destroying humankind. Therefore, they escaped, to at least save themselves.
Fie, to stand for the first men among the rabble. Ah, loathing, loathing, loathing! What doth it now matter about us kings? Thine old sickness seizeth thee, said here the king on the left. Thy loathing seizeth thee, my poor brother. Thou knowest, however, that someone heareth us.
These kings were considered by the populace to be first men. That is, those who are the figureheads, supposed to represent the values and manners of this populace. They couldn't take it any longer, says the king on the right, before the other king stops his rant, because he remembers that they have company.
Immediately thereupon, Zarathustra, who had opened ears and eyes to this talk, rose from his hiding place, advanced towards the kings, and thus began, He who hearkeneth unto you, he who gladly hearkeneth unto you, is called Zarathustra. I am Zarathustra, who once said, What doth it now matter about kings? Forgive me, I rejoiced when ye said to each other, What doth it matter about us kings? Here, however, is my domain and jurisdiction. What may ye be seeking in my domain? Perhaps, however, ye have found on your way what I seek, namely the higher man.
Zarathustra introduces himself, and adds that he enjoyed hearing such wise words, echoing things he has always been saying, coming from their mouths. He asks them if they have seen the higher man that he is seeking. For us readers, it is quite obvious that these kings are the higher men that he is seeking, men who did not bow to the rabble but escaped to find something better. Strangely, he doesn't seem to get it.
When the kings heard this, they beat upon their breasts, and said with one voice, We are recognized. With the sword of thine utterance severest thou the thickest darkness of our hearts. Thou hast discovered our distress, for lo, we are on our way to find the higher man. The man that is higher than we, although we are kings. To him do we convey this ass, for the highest man shall also be the highest lord on earth.
The kings tell him that they, too, are seeking the higher man. They mean someone who is better than them, someone that they can follow in order to create a better humanity.
There is no sorer misfortune in all human destiny than when the mighty of the earth are not also the first men. Then everything becometh false and distorted and monstrous. And when they are even the last men, and more beast than man, then riseth and riseth the populace in honour, and at last saith even the populace virtue, Lo, I alone am virtue.
The higher man, say the kings, should be the one leading humanity and determining its values. But today, the rabble makes the rules, and this shall be humanity's undoing.
What have I just heard? Answered Zarathustra. What wisdom in kings! I am enchanted, and verily I have already promptings to make a rhyme thereon. Even if it should happen to be a rhyme not suited for everyone's ears, I unlearned long ago to have consideration for long ears. Well then, well now. Here, however, it happened that the ass also found utterance. It said distinctly and with malevolence, Yeah.
Zarathustra realizes that these kings have finally come to some of the conclusions that he always espoused, and this makes him happy, and inspires him to compose a song. The song, he says, is not for every ear, just for those worthy of hearing it, and he evidently believes that these kings are worthy. Those who are not worthy, the populace, he characterizes as having long ears. At this point, however, the donkey reminds him that he is there as well. He has long ears, but he also wants to hear the song. The donkey asserts itself as a character in the story.
'Twas once, methinks, year one of our blessed Lord, drunk without wine, the Sibyl thus deplored, how ill things go, decline, decline, ne'er sank the world so low. Rome now hath turned harlot and harlot stew, Rome's Caesar a beast, and God hath turned Jew.
Zarathustra's song puts the blame on Christianity. In Roman times, the noblemen were indeed the ones who ruled and determined the values. But then came the Christians and imposed the Jewish God, the God that said that the meek shall inherit the earth. The Sibyl, the seer, warned back then that this spells doom. And, indeed, the meek, also known as the rabble, have inherited the earth. And here we are.
2. With those rhymes of Zarathustra the kings were delighted. The king on the right, however, said, O Zarathustra, how well it was that we set out to see thee. For thine enemies showed us thy likeness in their mirror. There lookedst thou with the grimace of a devil, and sneeringly, so that we were afraid of thee. But what good did it do? Always didst thou prick us anew in heart and ear with thy sayings. Then did we say at last, what doth it matter how he look?
Part 2 begins with the kings admitting that they believed what they were told about Zarathustra, told by those who want to maintain the current bad values and manners, and thus regard Zarathustra as their greatest enemy, and demonize him. But his words worked on them, and now that they have awakened to see the current values for what they are, they realize he was the one who was right all along. He is the higher man that they came to seek.
We must hear him, him who teacheth, Ye shall love peace as a means to new wars, and the short peace more than the long. No one ever spake such warlike words. What is good? To be brave is good. It is the good war that halloweth every cause. O Zarathustra, our father's blood stirred in our veins at such words. It was like the voice of spring to old wine casks.
The kings tell Zarathustra that his words, which he spoke in War and Warriors, reminded them of their predecessors, from the medieval times when noblemen were warriors. They, too, preferred war over peace.
When the swords ran among one another like red spotted serpents, then did our fathers become fond of life. The sun of every peace seemed to them languid and lukewarm. The long peace, however, made them ashamed. How they sighed, our fathers, when they saw on the wall brightly furbished, dried-up swords. Like those they thirsted for war, for a sword thirsteth to drink blood, and sparkleth with desire.
The kings begin to reminisce about those glory days. Here, however, is where Zarathustra has enough. The first part was about him finding common ground with the kings. In the second part, he realizes that it only goes so far.
When the kings thus discoursed and talked eagerly of the happiness of their fathers, there came upon Zarathustra no little desire to mock at their eagerness, for evidently they were very peaceable kings whom he saw before him, kings with old and refined features. But he restrained himself. Well, said he, thither leadeth the way, there lieth the cave of Zarathustra, and this day is to have a long evening. At present, however, a cry of distress calleth me hastily away from you.
Zarathustra's sarcasm is reawakened when he sees these two kings, who are of the genteel, courtly noblemen of present day, talk so eagerly about war, which they are obviously not cut for. But he still regards the change in them as a positive thing, so he restrains himself, and invites them to stay and wait for him in his cave.
It will honour my cave if kings want to sit and wait in it, but to be sure ye will have to wait long. Well, what of that? Where doth one at present learn better to wait than at courts? And the whole virtue of kings that hath remained unto them, is it not called today ability to wait? Thus spake Zarathustra.
He does mock them a little bit, noting how impotent today's kings have become. But then he leaves them behind and carries on his search for the higher man. This will be a recurring theme in the coming chapters. Zarathustra will meet figures who are obviously the higher men he is seeking, but will not recognize them as such. The thing that we are still wondering about, together with him, is who made the cry of distress? It wasn't the two kings, as far as we can tell. This is still a mystery, and we shall have to keep on reading to solve it.